Today, I'm going to give you a tour of a brand new 15,000 square feet commercial kitchen that has state-of-the-art equipment. And of course, for a kitchen like this, we've installed some really cool tech. We're going to talk about my choice of Wi-Fi, of door access, all of the different sensors that are spread out across this factory. We're going to talk about the VoIP system. We're going to talk about my server rack and what it takes to run all of this. My goal here is to make business and technology indistinguishable. I want technology to solve real business problems. And I'm going to show you that everything we've chosen here was chosen for a reason and to solve a specific business need. And as I take you through this tour, there are also challenges that they're facing today that I'm trying to solve with technology, but I don't really have a great answer. So I would love your help. I would love your support. The aim of everything that you see here is to solve business needs using technology. So, without further ado, and without talking too much, let's go on this tour. All right, we are going to start on the outside. So I've got two things going on here. First, we've got the G4 doorbell, and that's associated with a smart chime on the inside. And then we've got the UniFi access, the light. Don't ask why it's mounted this way. We had some mounting issues, but the mounting works. Now, this thing is installed in Chicago, so weather here is definitely a factor. But when this was installed, it was kind of in the springtime, so it wasn't really hot, wasn't really cold. It was okay. But what I noticed is when the sun would hit the access, basically, the UniFi light, it just wouldn't work properly. It didn't function properly. So I put this guard on. Now, I considered also painting this or putting some kind of a film on it to completely guard against the sun, but I'm like, let's first try with this. And so far, it's worked like a champ, which reinforces the fact that I wasn't having a temperature problem so much as, I don't know, maybe the rays of the sun that were hitting it directly during certain times of the day, this thing wouldn't work. This plastic cover, however, has been fantastic. It's worked flawlessly. I don't even have to paint it at this point. All right, now on the inside of this door, all the way up there, you are going to see that I've got a couple things mounted. We have the hub that is supplying the necessary power and Ethernet and everything to the access point next to it, but also to the strike that's configured or that's installed on the door, and also the access point that was on the outside to let you in. I also have on this particular door the UniFi smart sensor. You are going to see a lot of UniFi products being used, and this one is helpful because this is a pretty big location. So I want to be notified when some doors are open, or primarily when doors are left open, not necessarily when they open or close. This is incredibly helpful. Moving on to another door, you're going to notice that I'm using these light access points pretty much everywhere for a variety of reasons. First, when we were installing these were the only ones that we can find. These were the only ones in stock. And although these are typically used, to wave your hand for exit purposes, we are using those for entry purposes. So we have one of the access points, the Pro, on the main door, because that one's nice and cool and everything. But everywhere else, we're using these for entry and instead of exit, and they have been working flawlessly. They work really, really good. Let's see what's on the other side of this door. Now, if we come in here, you're gonna see that I've got a similar setup, except I don't have an access point here, and I also don't have any kind of a smart sensor on top. What I do have is an IoT gateway, and that's what's mounted right next to it. Now, the IoT gateway is used for all of the different sensors that I have spread out across this industrial kitchen. Now, not all of these sensors are obviously UniFi sensors. Most of them are not, and I'll show you in the freezer and the cooler what we're doing, but these are intended to be temperature sensors. Now, on the other side of that door, I have a similar setup, except here I don't have an access point. What I have is essentially the hub, and right next to the hub, I have a Dragino IoT gateway, essentially. This is used so that all of the different sensors that are spread out across this commercial kitchen can communicate with this gateway. And I'll show you those sensors in a second here, but we don't have a smart sensor on the door. We do have an access hub, essentially, for every door that we have in here. Now, in the walk-in cooler and freezer, I have these sensors that are essentially, again, simply temperature sensors that communicate with that Dragino hub that I showed you earlier. That's the gateway that will then take all of these packets and put them on the IP network so that I can use Grafana to visualize them in a dashboard. So I've got these types of sensors spread out all across this warehouse, specifically for temperatures. Now back to the front door. This is the only place where I have the UniFi Access Pro essentially. I also have a chime, an external chime that's connected to this. And this is cool because what I have is simply something very similar. Basically, ring the doorbell so that people can get in. I love this thing because it calls your name. It also, for those that maybe have forgotten their fobs, it gives you another way to access the door by using a PIN. So I have that configured for certain type. Not everyone, not every employee has it, but the managers have both a fob and a PIN just in case one of them forgets it at home. And while I'm here, let me show you my gardenia. And man, if any of you are experts at growing these gardenias, y'all let me know, because these things are the most difficult to take care of and the most difficult to get to bloom. Although I've got a couple of buds in here, so I think I'm doing the right thing, but hey, if you've got some ideas for me, let me know.
Welcome, Elias.
All of the offices have the Yealinks T46Ss. And those are all connected to the Sangoma. And I have another phone system. That's a long story conversation for another day. Now you will notice I have these security cameras spread out pretty much everywhere. I do have another UniFi switch. It's a small UniFi switch that I have mounted in the ceiling here that just helps me bring more PoE to these different cameras. I was running out of PoE, so this is an easy way to bring power to these cameras, basically. All right, it's time to take a look at everything that is running in this factory. Let's take a look at what's in the server rack. All right, so let's talk about what I have in this rack. This rack pretty much operates the whole kitchen here. So we've got a bunch of patch panels. It is what it is. These are basic stuff. At the very top, I have a UDM Pro. Basically, this is not the SE version, so some of these ports are not necessarily PoE, but I'm taking advantage of them. This thing I have deployed in 2 other locations for this company, so we've got site-to-site VPNs between 3 of these UDM Pros. We go into another patch panel. I love these Ethernet cables. These are the thin Ethernet cables. I absolutely love them. We go into the second thing here, which is the switch. This is an all PoE switch. Now, the reason I invested in this was because I needed the PoE++ for the access hubs. And I've got right now 4 access hubs. We're gonna go back up to another one, so it's gonna be about 5 access hubs. And the last 8 ports, I believe, on this switch are all PoE++. So we use this switch to aggregate everything, right? So I've got PoE phones that are powered by this switch. I've got the access points that are powered by this switch. I've got the hubs that are powered by this switch. Anything that requires a PoE is essentially powered by the switch, with the exception of the cameras. I'll show you what I'm doing for the cameras in a second. Now, if we go a little farther down, I also have a 10 gig aggregation point with a switch, and this thing is used to connect to my ESX servers. It's connecting to the NAS that I'll show you in a second. It uses this for uplinks back to the PoE switch, the big 48 port PoE switch, and also to the UDM Pro. So this thing aggregates everything for me. Now, if we move a little further down, I have the NVR. Now, this NVR has a switch on the back of it. I'll show you that in a second. That's all PoE, so it can support up to 16 cameras, but I'm already over that. So what I have is another UniFi 16 switch that I use to power the balance of the cameras. So I think we're around 24 or 25 cameras. So anything that's not powered by the NVR itself and the switch that's on the back is powered by that UniFi, the 16 switch. If I go a little further down, this is a Sangoma appliance. This thing runs the this thing runs the voice over IP system. It's great. This thing runs like a champ. The features that are on it here, I'm running FreePBX. It's great. It wasn't very difficult to configure or install. It's amazing. The only thing I'm gonna have to do at some point is I'm gonna have to buy another one so that I can have some HA, some high availability essentially in it. If we go a little further down, this is something that I bought, but I've never really used. It's essentially a KVM. It's a Belkin KVM. It's one of those pullouts. It has a keyboard and a monitor. Yes, I know what you're gonna think. Old school, Eli. You are correct. That is old school, and honestly, I've never really used it, but it's in here just in case. We move a little further down. I've got something really cool, even though I'm about to change it, but I'm open to comments and suggestions. I have 2 super microcomputers. Technically, I have 3 super microcomputers. What you see here is this is a blade system. So on the left, there's an ESX server, and on the right, there's an ESX server. And those have their own different power supplies on the back of the server. So in a 2U chassis, essentially what I have here is 2 separate servers. So that's pretty cool. And I have 2 ESXi hosts, and I run all of my virtual machines on here. Now, if we go a little further down, what you're seeing here is what I call Hulk. And I call it Hulk because this is my NAS. This is the storage that is supplied to both the ESX server hosts. This is, anything shared services, anything shared files I use with Hulk. Now, the reason I said these things might go away is I use this server room, let's call it, also as an office. And I don't know if it's coming across in the video, but this thing is very loud. And in addition to the loudness, I have to dust off the dust, basically, once a week. I mean, this thing collects a ton of dust. I'm not sure I need this much horsepower. I think I overestimated what I need, to be honest, with this. So what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm gonna probably replace Hulk with a Synology, which is going to be significantly quieter, and it's going to give me everything I need to function. And I'm gonna replace those 2 blades, even though I really love those servers, but I think they're overkill for what I need. So I'm gonna go with Intel NUCs or a very small factor type of servers. So I'm gonna put 3 of them instead of 2, because with vCenter and ESXi, they prefer 3 servers, so I can take advantage of all the features. And those will be significantly quieter, right? I'm running about 15 virtual machines, so I don't have a huge need. I don't see this place ever needing more than these virtual machines. So as a result, these are overkill. I'm gonna remove them, get rid of all the dust. I'm going to get rid of all of the noise, and it's a win-win. Bada bing, bada boom, basically. And at the bottom, I have 2 Triplite UPS power supplies. Those have been running great, but they're heavy and bulky. And to be honest with you, I couldn't resist, with all of the UniFi stuff that I have in here, to not buy the UniFi Smart Power. So let me show you where that is. So if we move on to the back of this server rack, down here, yes, excuse the wiring mess. I am not a huge wiring guy, but down here I have the UniFi Smart Power. This thing is awesome both from a management and features perspective, but also it's light and it gives me the same amount of battery essentially that the other 2 gives me. So over time I'll probably retire them and simply consolidate on this. I really enjoy this. And for the rest of the cameras that I was talking about, this is the other UniFi 16 PoE switch that I use to power the cameras. I have an access point in here, and I have a small UniFi camera that keeps an eye on the office. Now, what I also have here is essentially the modem. This is coming from AT&T. This is a 1 gig service that I have coming in here. But because all of these services are so critical, I also have a backup internet also from AT&T. This is a 5G, essentially wireless backup. And the way I have these configured is actually pretty cool, because I'm not configuring them in the typical configuration that AT&T would recommend, which is essentially to take an Ethernet cable from here, from this wireless, and plug it into the modem, so that if this modem ever goes down, the wireless kicks in. Now, some of the challenges that I've seen in at least my part of the world is when I have a disruption in service from AT&T, this modem never really goes down. So this modem remains pingable, although it's not servicing. There's no internet that's coming out of it. So as a result, this thing never kicks in. Why? Because there's a heartbeat that it's still receiving a ping from the modem. So I changed this a little bit. So instead of connecting the wireless all the way back to the actual modem, they are both connected on the UDM Pro, and I do the failover and the failback directly on the UDM Pro. This thing has been working very nicely for me. So this is the tour. This is everything I have in this server rack from a hardware perspective. I, of course, put some LED lights on here just to make it, pretty and, snazzy, and hey, why not, right? All right, now we get to the fun part. You know how I told you at the beginning that I have a problem that I would like your help with. Now, this commercial kitchen has an entire pita line oven. This thing makes 9,000 loaves of pita per hour. It is massive. This line is massive. Now, I'm not going to show you the entire line. It's kind of besides the point. But so here's the problem that I'm facing. So these folks, and there's a bunch of them, and they always work kind of the overnight shift. Now, what I'm showing you on the screen right now is called a proofer. Once the bread goes through the process, it will go through these different lanes that you're seeing here, up and down while it's proofing. Now, every now and again, something will happen, a mistake will happen, something will happen with these lines where the dough that's going inside them will start to crumble and become a big, a big mass, so to speak. So instead of being flat and round like a pizza dough, so to speak, and you'll have 3 on each of these lanes, you'll have a big mass of dough that's traveling through these lanes. And what will happen is as they're going through these lanes, as they come close to go into the oven so that they can become pita bread, if you have a big mass of dough that's going through here, what will happen is that will catch on fire. Now, of course, the bakers will always be paying attention. But what I'm trying to do is to automate the process. What I want is as the dough is going through these lanes, to somehow detect a large mass of dough. Because again, if the dough is going through it, think of it as a pizza. It's a round dough, it's very flat, it's moving along these rails, let's call them whatever you want to call them, no problem. But once it becomes a mass, someone has to detect it. And if they don't detect it and it gets to the end, it will catch fire and that will become a problem. So what I was thinking of doing is to install sensors on different areas of these lanes. For example, I would mount a couple on this here. And this sensor will simply be a sensor that's going in one direction. If the dough is going through normally, then the sensor will not be triggered because the dough travels under the sensor. But when the sensor becomes a mass, then that mass is going to cut through the sensor. And once it cuts through the sensor, I was thinking of installing, let's say, a siren, maybe somewhere up here, a couple of those sirens that could be installed on the top of this. And once that mass cuts through it, that siren goes off. That way it will alert the bakers that, hey, there's a large mass of dough that just went through here, and it will tell them where that dough is approximately so that they can go catch it. So those are the sensors that I was thinking of using. I'm going to show them to you right now, but tell me if you have a better solution for something like this that would be more of an alert system. I would love any kind of feedback, any kind of comments. And we're back in the studio now, so what did you think of this tour? Pretty cool, right? Now, in part 2 of this video, I'm going to tell you about all the different tools, the software, how I've put all of this together. So make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification bell so that you're alerted the next time I upload a video, and stay tuned for part 2 of this video series. I'll see you all later.